The Catholics of Oz is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to episode 66 of The Catholics of Oz. The Catholics of Oz is a show where we discuss faith, culture, and what's been happening from an Aussie perspective. Whether it's synods or science, apostolates and apps, providence or productivity, you can hear us right now on The Catholics of Oz. Hello and welcome to episode 66 of The Catholics of Oz. My name is Lindsay Sands, your host for today's episode, and I'm joined by my slightly sinusy sister, Caroline Knight. Caroline, how are you feeling today?
I'm a bit under the weather, but going to persevere.
Yeah, thanks for being able to come to this recording. I know you've been a bit unwell, so lots of appreciation from us, and I'm sure from everyone who's listening today.
No, thank you.
Yes, and also joining us is Daddy Shortlegs, Lino's of all. Lino, how are you going today?
I'm good. Yo, it's Daddy Shortlegs here again. I'm back on Catholics of Oz on the SQPN channel. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a call on, what was that number again, Lindsay? I totally forgot about it now.
686656. I don't know. We'll get to it at the end. I can't remember numbers. Yes. So if anyone wants to know where that reference is coming from, just listen to the last 30 seconds of episode 65 with Lino's blooper. Poor Lino. People can't see right now, but Lino's coughing because he can't stop laughing.
All I can say is, guys, are you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah. Are you ready to rumble? Yeah, we'll talk about that later on. All right.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. I hope when you're listening to today's episode, you're on a stable surface because there were some happenings in Melbourne that Caroline will talk about in our little science segment later on.
Well.
Caroline, you ready to quake everyone's boots?
I will rock your world.
Whoa!
I think I just combined 3 or 4 different phrases there. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah.
I don't know. We all have lockdown brain. Leave us alone. Feel sorry for Australia.
Yes,
Moving on.
We're getting through it.
We're getting through it. We're almost out of it, which is the best part.
Yeah.
All right,
yes.
let's roll on though. So just before we do continue the show, just like to remind everyone, first of all, thank you so much for listening to the Catholics of Oz. If you've been a long time listener, we really appreciate that that you're with us and that we can be with you and share the show. And if you're listening for the very first time, there are lots of ways that you can continue to listen to us. So first of all, the StarQuest Facebook page posts all of our shows on their Facebook page. I think I just got that wrong. But anyway, you can find posts about our shows at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. We're also tweeted with the handle at SQPN, where you'll see our shows tweeted as well. And you can like and share those there as well. And like I said, if you're new to listening to the Catholics of Oz, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or your favorite podcast player. There's also an SQPN YouTube channel that hosts the Catholics of Oz as well, so just search for SQPN on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications when new episodes of this show and all the other great shows on SQPN are released as well. And don't forget also that you can leave us feedback on your favorite podcast players as well. This helps us to reach other people, so that lovely 5-star review and a lovely comment. By the way, we do see those and we're grateful when you do that. So thank you very much if you have already. But this helps us to grow our community, to reach new people, and being with people, especially in these times, but in all times. This is what we're all about, is sharing a bit of positivity in all of the topics that we talk about. So speaking of topics we're talking about, today I wanted to start us off, guys, by talking about a topic that's popped up recently. So maybe a bit of context first of all. So as everyone knows, this podcast comes from Victoria, Australia. So we're in the Archdiocese of Melbourne. And Victoria, so congratulations, Lino and Caroline. We have a new world record. Victoria apparently is the state that has experienced the most days of lockdown in the entire world. So woo, party hats. Yay. Well done, everyone. Well done.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah.
All for a good cause.
Yeah. All for a good cause. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So last year we had a significant lockdown period because there was unfortunately, the hotel quarantine system wasn't quite up to scratch. The virus got into the community, got a bit out of control. We got to experience some lovely freedom for the first 6 and a bit months of this year. And then, unfortunately, the Delta variant reared its head and was quite serious here. So it's become quite infectious in Victoria. So we've been in lockdown again for this year, 1,000 days? I forgot. I kind of lost count now.
Yeah, lost.
I don't know, but it feels like I've hardly been to the office at work. Like I think I went in once to take in my computer, and then it was announced again lockdown that day.
No.
So I had to take the computer back.
Yeah, it's been a lockdown slippery slope. It's like you're in lockdown, you're out of lockdown, you're in lockdown, you're out of lockdown. You know what? Just stay in lockdown.
I'm just I've got used to the hermit life, I tell you.
Yeah. So the reason I'm giving this context is because we are now working as a state to get ourselves out of lockdown and to start reestablishing normal, starting with COVID normal, and then hopefully normal as as time goes on. But the biggest thing at the moment, obviously, is the push to vaccinate as many people as possible. So, guys, you can remind me now about our vaccination rate as of recording anyway, because this podcast will be 2 weeks later. But we are, I think in Victoria, we're just over 50% of people who are double vaccinated.
Double vaccinated,
It's around that.
We were really close. We might have passed it already with 79 to 80% of people who are
over 80% now.
Yeah, received single dose
vaccination.
Yeah, which is really good, because that means within potentially 3 weeks now, because the timeline now that we have enough Pfizer vaccine, and a lot more Moderna vaccine and a lot of AstraZeneca and vaccine. Just name all the vaccines. So that means that within approximately 3 weeks, those people who are single dosed will be able to be double dosed, and will be at our 80% threshold. So the national plan, Australia's national plan, is that things will start to be restored at 70% of double doses, 80% of double doses. There'll be even more. And we'll see what happens. Like I think international travel was just
I think so.
Yesterday Scott Morrison saying that hopefully in a few weeks' time that international travel, the ban of traveling out of the country and into the country will be lifted.
Will be lifted. Yeah. So there are things happening, and by Christmas we will look very different to how we look now. Is the idea.
Hopefully we're not a bit more sick.
Hopefully we'll be better. Yeah.
But we'll see.
And that also depends on the moment, on how things are going, because we are in a bit of a tenuous position. So as of today, it was 1,400 and something
88
cases, which is not an awesome number. And it doesn't sound like a lot. If you're listening from somewhere else around the world, that actually doesn't sound like a lot. You might be thinking, oh, we get that every day. But the thing is, because our vaccination rates aren't quite there yet, this could actually overwhelm our hospital system, which is why we're still in lockdown. So we are on our way out. We've been given a plan. Everyone has been asked to get on board and help out by getting vaccinated or doing whatever it takes to help out. And I think the overwhelming majority of Victorians, it sounds like that's what they're doing. So looking forward to hopefully seeing you in person by Christmas, Caroline, or sooner.
That would be lovely.
Yeah, it'd be great.
We can see you all. We could all hang out and have a picnic outside.
That's it. Yeah. So the reason I give that context is because on the topic of vaccinations, one area that we're interested in is going to church or going back to church, because the issue has been raised about, and this is the part that might rile a few people up. And so I'm talking specifically about the Australian context. So if you're from another part of the world, I am not stepping, out of my way to comment on things that are happening in your part of the world. I'm talking about particularly in Victoria, Australia, and how it affects us. There might be things that you can relate to, and we would actually appreciate hearing from your experiences. But I want to be really clear that I'm not criticizing anyone who might have maybe a different position from what we're about to talk about. And in no way are we being controversial, because we're actually just relaying the teachings of the church and our church leaders. That's where I'm going to go from there. So let's talk about this. I'm going to start by using an article, actually, guys. And this was produced or written, I should say, by Bill Uren, who's a Jesuit priest. And I was actually a little bit surprised by this, because it's probably a little bit more critical of the Australian bishops, three in particular, than I thought might be necessary. And I'm using this as context to talk about the different positions people are taking in society, and what our bishops have actually said as well, and what implications that has for us. So that's a lot of groundwork just to set up this topic, but I thought it was really important to give some context. So I'll just read some excerpts from this, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion. So first of all, he starts by saying, one would hope that at a time of crisis, archbishops would be careful not to lend their authority in a way that could be construed as supporting anti-vaccination and anti-lockdown sentiments. Melbourne Catholics, and indeed many other Christians, might have been surprised on Grand Final Saturday to read the front page of The Age that their Archbishop was interceding with the Victorian government to allow unvaccinated worshippers to join indiscriminately with the vaccinated when restrictions on church services are lifted in November. So I want to pull him up politely and nicely and dialogically, first of all, for that phrase where he says, allowing unvaccinated worshippers to join indiscriminately. In my reading, that's not what the Archbishop or what Archbishop Comensoli has said. And I know that sometimes on this podcast, we sound very pro-Archbishop Comensoli. And it's not to do that, but I feel like it's our obligation to the truth. And I think when you talk about an issue, you do need to talk about it truthfully, which is why I don't think criticizing Father Bill is where we should go with this either. But what I would like to do is just politely correct by talking about what's actually been said. So at this point, I'm just going to read. This is the statement, the full statement that Archbishop Comensoli sent to the Age newspaper, which they quoted from. So I don't think they actually used every single word that he used here. And I'm not saying that they were nitpicking either and trying to make it sound controversial. I don't think that's what they were trying to do. If anyone thinks they did, you can correct me on that. But here is what he said fully. He said, spiritual well-being is as important as psychological and physical well-being. Lockdown has affected Victorians deeply, no less for the thousands of people of faith who have not been able to attend worship or receive the sacraments of the church. In our faith tradition, all the available vaccines in Australia are permissible to receive, and our clergy and people are strongly encouraged to be vaccinated. We believe we can achieve ways that allow both vaccinated and unvaccinated people to worship in person safely, and are working with other faith leaders to bring those proposals to the table. We have been very flexible throughout this pandemic, but are urging government and health authorities to make clear what the end goal is after we hit 80% full vaccination status. It would be a tragedy if two classes of citizens, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, were to emerge and be entrenched as we look towards a COVID normal goal. So I just want to address that phrase indiscriminately, because what it makes it sound like is the Archbishop is saying, just put every single one person, vaccinated, unvaccinated, into a church, pack them in, and just leave them alone. Now, let's look at if that's actually what he said. He said here, and I'm just trying to work it out here. So I'm trying to find the right spot. We believe we can achieve ways that allow both vaccinated and unvaccinated people to worship in person safely. And they're working with faith leaders to bring this to the table. And it also mentions here that they are speaking to the government and authorities about it. So they're not saying, and he's not saying, just chuck them all in the same church. All right, just open it up, let people do whatever they want. Saying we are looking for ways to make it safe for everyone to go back to church and worship. Because there are people who won't be vaccinated who also need access to the sacraments as well. So that's where he's going at with this. And then he's saying we don't want to create two classes of people. I mean, we don't want to create this situation where some people are treated like lepers because they're not vaccinated as well. So that's where he's going with that. I'm just going to go on with this article very briefly. Just find the spot that I'm up to. One might have thought that at the end of the week, when the violent protests by anti-vaxxers and their associates had disrupted the city, such encouragement by the Archbishop was, to say the least, less than timely. Even more surprising and embarrassing to the Catholic community might have been the realization that in making this request, the Melbourne Archbishop was echoing a similar request that had been made by the Archbishop of Sydney of New South Wales government a month or so ago. So all I'm trying to say is I don't think that what's been presented in this article actually reflects what the Archbishop was trying to say. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Lindsay, you're just an apologist for the Archbishop, and you're just trying to defend him because you like him and he's been on your podcast twice, by the way, just mention that. But I've got to say that's not the case. The article seems to, and I'll leave it for everyone to read, plus the statement, plus the other things I'm going to quote as well. I'm going to leave this all in the show notes and people can do their own investigation and tell me if I've presented the evidence correctly or not. But it seems like he's trying to lump these bishops in with certain other bishops and leaders in our church who have said things about the vaccines which I think are unjust. And if there are bishops that you want to go after, I'd say those are probably the ones, not the one to create an us and them. But there have been bishops that I've read, sadly, on Twitter who have said things, unfortunately using phrases such as New World Order, microchipping, Bill Gates, the conspiracy stuff. And I'm sorry if people don't like me saying this, but those comments, those things are completely unacceptable because, one, they don't ally with church teaching, and they're also not the truth. Catholics, I love you all, but the thing is, we have an obligation to the truth, and YouTube videos are not true. In the sense of doing research on YouTube is not where we're going to find the truth. If we want to find the truth, let's listen to Christ and let's listen to our church leaders. And one of the saddest things that I've seen is that people have been casting doubt on our church leaders, like, for example, on Pope Francis and others, simply because they've said getting the vaccine is part of the common good, which is our teaching about how we look after everyone. So with that in mind, I'll leave that there. The last thing he says in this article is, otherwise, we might be inclined to ask how far the archbishops are removed not only from Pope Francis and the smell of the sheep and the field hospital, but also their own archdiocese from the COVID wards and the exhausted staff of their Catholic hospitals. Yeah, and I thought that was a bit far. I don't know that Archbishop Comensoli is removed from the smell of the sheep of his own people, in that sense. I mean, anecdotally, why would he bother to turn up on this podcast? We're three nobodies from the edge of the diocese, and he's come on this show to talk to us and answer our questions as people of faith and listen to us, and be honest with us in his answers as well. So I don't know why you would make the accusation that he's not going out of his way to take on the smell of the sheep and not be like Pope Francis. And when he's been with us, he's quoted Pope Francis often as well. I think he's very in line with Pope Francis. So very quickly, what further can I say to show that Archbishop Comensoli and indeed the Australian Catholic bishops are on board with promoting vaccination, encouraging people to be vaccinated? I've got here a letter written on April the 20th this year from the Australian Catholic Bishops Conference, and I'll share this in our show notes as well. It's from the Bishops' Commission for Life, Family and Public Engagement, and it's titled Frequently Asked Questions and Guidance for the Catholic Community in Australia Regarding the COVID-19 Vaccine. So I'll just give you the spark notes that there's at the top, there are 4 dot points, which basically, like too long don't read kind of thing that people do. So there are the 4 dot points. In fact, I think people should read the whole document, to be honest, but here are the top 4, the summary in 4 dot points. Vaccination against COVID-19 is a morally good thing and to be encouraged. Point 2. While some or all COVID-19 vaccines currently available or intended to be made available in Australia are associated with ethically questionable production and research practices, it is morally permissible to receive any and all vaccines made available. And this, I just want to mention, is echoing the teaching of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has been saying this since well before the pandemic as well. Point number 3, the Catholic Church encourages governments to conduct all medical research and health delivery in moral ways and to offer patients a choice of options. Number 4, if you have any medical questions about a vaccine, consult with your medical practitioner. Not with YouTube, not with your favorite politician, not even with your favorite bishop. If you have a question about the vaccine, speak to your GP, because your GP is the best person. And that's what I've been, some people have been coming to me and saying, oh, I'm not sure, they were produced too quickly. I don't like the moral thing, whatever. Legitimate questions, good. Now go to the person who can help you answer that question, your GP. And if your GP sounds a bit dodgy, go get a second opinion, right? Right?
Or a third, maybe.
Yeah, or a third or fourth. But if your GP mentions
Luckily,
microchips,
we have very good GPs in Australia. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And they will give you good advice. Yeah. So that, and then I'll just read the final note here as well. So this is I'm reading the start and the end. There's a whole lot more to read as well, but the start and the end. Final note. Catholics and their families have a right to clear and accurate information about vaccines. The bishops remind everyone that we have a duty of care to the most vulnerable. exercises in misinformation, unbalanced sharing of facts, or fear-mongering, whether by electronic communications or other means, are not appropriate and are inconsistent with our Christian commitment to truth and mercy. This letter was approved by Archbishop Peter A. Comensoli. So I'd like to just table that as two things. One, the Catholic Archbishop of Melbourne is not against vaccines and is not casting doubt on people getting vaccines. He is expressing concerns that there are people who could be treated as second class in our churches. We're talking about in our churches because they won't have access to the sacraments like everyone else. And what he's saying is we need to find some way that people who are not vaccinated for legitimate reasons need to be accommodated in our churches as well. And for example, this is an anecdote. It doesn't reflect everything that's going on in the church in Melbourne, but our own parish priest has, he's spoken to the parishioners about maybe providing opportunities, like, saying more masses, making more masses available so that, people can attend vaccinated or unvaccinated or whatever. That might sound like creating two tiers, but it's also about safety as well. So why might people not get vaccinated? Well, for one, they could have health reasons. We know that people with anaphylaxis and other health issues, underlying medical issues, can't get vaccinated yet. So do they just get sidelined? There might be a person that has a conscientious objection to the vaccine. And if you do, you better have a really good reason considering the teachings of the church. By the way, I love you. All right. But considering the teachings of the church as they are, the reasons for conscientious objection, I would say I'd say there aren't a lot of them. So there needs to be a good reason. But however, if you choose to conscientiously object against the vaccine, and this is church teaching, it's in the document as well, you have a moral responsibility to make sure you do everything you can for the safety of others. So here's a hypothetical, for example. None of our kids can get vaccinated against coronavirus at the moment. I have a 3-year-old who, when he gets a cold, gets terribly asthmatic. I'm actually really worried about what would happen if he got COVID-19. And I want to do, that's my family's getting vaccinated, not only because of our duty to society in the common good, as Christ calls us to have, but also to protect him as well, but also to protect other people's children, to support our nurses in hospitals, because we don't want our hospitals to be overwhelmed. The stories of our nurses are heartbreaking. And the common good, we have an obligation to support them and so many others as well. Anyway, I've ranted and raved a lot about this. All of the articles, the statements, there's also a website, catholic.org.au/coronavirus, which is the Catholic Church Australia's website. I'm putting that all there. And there's a short video at the very end of that link that people can watch explaining why it's okay for Catholics to get the vaccine against this disease and other diseases as well. All right, so I've said a lot. Caroline, do you want to? You and I are in the same space thinking about our children. Your boys are way too young to get vaccinated as well, but and there are other considerations you're having as well. But what are your thoughts in terms of going back to church when it opens up again? How are you feeling right now? And just in relation to this and the other things I've just been talking about as well.
I guess the first thing I will say is that I miss Jesus. I mean, in a sense that I miss going to receive communion. I miss being in his presence, physically, spiritually, everything we believe. I'm longing to go back to Mass and to receive the sacraments, which, all of them, including reconciliation, confession, we haven't had the opportunity for several months. So having said that, I am not sure what to think about going to Mass yet. I am fully vaccinated because I want to protect myself. I'm a mother of 2 children. I don't want to be so unwell that I go to ICU and nobody's there to look after my children. So I did it in the context of a responsibility to my family and also for myself. I don't want to be unwell. I get unwell a lot. You probably hear me, oh, look, Caroline's sick again every podcast. So I do get a lot of colds and run down quite easily. So I don't want to think what would happen if I actually got the COVID-19 virus. And we need to think of the children. I think in this context, we're mostly thinking about adults, adult vaccinated, adult not vaccinated. So far, there has not been a vaccine approved for children under 12. And so until that happens, I'm erring on the side of protecting my kids. I don't want them exposed to the virus. So my husband and I have kind of made a decision that when things open up, we won't be doing entertainment things indoors. We'll be doing them outside. We've managed to do it through winter. We can easily do that during summer. My husband works in outdoor settings anyway, so that's good. I'm working from home. So we are kind of going to try and live an outdoor existence until we get more of a handle on this virus, to protect ourselves, our family, everyone. I would love if there was an outdoor mass that everyone could attend. I would feel a lot more comfortable with that. I am a bit uncomfortable, of course, with this whole, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. Like it's sad to think that there would be a kind of, you're naturally creating a society with those who are vaccinated and those who are not. There are some people who don't want to get vaccinated for whatever reason. There are some people who can't get vaccinated. So I think I agree with what you said, Lindsay, that if you're deciding not to get vaccinated just for moral reasons, okay, I understand that reason. I have that objection myself. I do not. Just
to interrupt, you and I have actually spoken about this last year about our ethical issues with the vaccines as well. Yeah. Yep.
Unfortunately, in modern medicine, there are embryonic stem cells used in a lot of things, not just this vaccine. Okay, so I want to say that as well. So when you're taking some kind of medical treatment, we just be aware that that could also be used. That could be derived from using embryonic stem cells as well. Not everything, but a lot. Vaccines, vaccines are common. We use vaccines for lots of diseases. And yes, this one seems to be made very quickly, but just remember it was a lot of funding was poured into it, and we are in a pandemic and we need something to help protect people from being sick. So, I guess, it's a delicate topic. I do have those moral objections myself, but I have to really look at protecting myself, protecting my children, and protecting others around me. Okay, yes, you can still get some illness, having the vaccine, but the body, it will work itself out of the body a lot quicker than if you had no vaccine. So I guess I urge people to just really think about, going and getting vaccinated. It's only going to protect you, and you don't end up in ICU if, you have an underlying condition that you're not aware of. There have been really perfectly healthy, strong young people who have died because they've not been vaccinated. They thought they had a cold, and then this disease, it sneaks up on you. You get a hyperimmune response. We've spoken about it before. It attacks your lungs. You cannot breathe, and you die. There have been people in New South Wales that we know about where they've had high number caseload numbers that have just passed away at home, and that's really sad. Yes. Okay, yep. So we're coming from this point of loving all of our listeners too and caring for all of you, because we really want the best for everyone. So I think I've gone off on a bit of a tangent. Sorry,
no, it's fine. Keep going.
But those are my reasons too why I'm a bit apprehensive to have like a big indoor mass with a lot of people, So, I think that if we can have some way, I don't necessarily think that you shouldn't have vaccinated, unvaccinated, you shouldn't have the mixing, but maybe in an outdoor setting where you're spaced apart, and there's a good airflow and stuff like that. But indoors, I'm very apprehensive to go and sit for an hour. I mean, even going back to the office, I'm not sure if I'm going to do that because, hi boss, yes, I'm not going to.
Wait, your boss is a listener? Hang on.
I doubt it.
Give Caroline a raise.
I doubt that too. But anyway, so like I said, we won't be doing much indoors except for maybe going to the supermarket quickly when we need to, doctor when we need to, stuff like that. But I haven't been taking my kids indoors. I mean, obviously we can't do anything indoors right now anyway, but so yeah, that I guess that kind of sums it up. Yeah, I don't know if I made sense.
That's all right. You're just sharing your honest feelings about it, which is fine.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Lino, what are your thoughts on this? It's a big topic. So do you want to come into the pool with us and tell us what you think?
Put my swimming trunks on and this is good. Oh, this is crazy. Yeah. When I read about this and heard about it on the radio and on TV and on Facebook and everything, there was on Facebook as well. They're talking about this, but the vaccinated and unvaccinated coming to church. I could say I'm with Caroline in the sense I'm sort of divided in a sense. Like I don't want to go to church knowing that there's people who are not vaccinated. You know what I mean? In the sense that I know I'm double vaccinated, but then if other people are not vaccinated and that you don't know if they have the virus, you don't know. You know, this thing can like Caroline said, and everyone knows that you can have a person who's totally physically okay, you don't see any signs, and all of a sudden the poor person has COVID. And have you guys heard that people didn't know they had COVID for so many days, and then they find out they had, and it just comes to you so quickly. It is a bit of a mixed bag for myself. I don't know if do I sit on the fence, or do I go? Will I go to mass? I know that everyone is vaccinated, then I can go. And if I found out that people are not vaccinated, will I have that fear of not going? You know what I mean? It's...
And the other thing too is like, even if you're vaccinated, you carry it a bit. Like if you've got the virus, and if people are unvaccinated, we've got a risk of giving them the virus too.
We could make them very sick. That's right.
That's the other side of things.
Which is a difficult,
And we don't want to do that, you know?
Yeah, I think...
So it is really about looking after each other.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I want to throw it out there that, again, we're not coming from a position of wanting to create a two-tiered society like the Archbishop was talking about. We just we actually just care about everyone. We care about the common good. You know, we care about all people. You know, we're all made in God's image and likeness, and we want everyone to have fair access to the sacraments. And when I say fair access to the sacraments, I mean in a way that that everyone is as safe as can possibly be. Again, my reading of the Archbishop's statement to the age is not that there's going to be some kind of willy-nilly everyone just do whatever you want in terms of going to church. It looks like they're trying to work with the government authorities to create a system where people do have access to mass, vaccinated or unvaccinated, in a way that can be done safely. And, you know, like you said, Caroline, outdoor masses, we're heading into summer. You know, we're in spring, we're heading summer. Melbourne weather being what it is, I don't know if that makes a difference.
Melbourne weather can be a bit iffy.
Yeah. But however, I mean, you can sit outdoors. You know, you can throw up a couple of marquees or whatever you want to do. You know, shades out. You know, there are, you know, even in cooler weather that would work. I don't know if every parish has the capacity to do that, but there are possibilities, at least through summer. You know, while this all happens. The other good thing is that the virus in summer there's a bit less, of it going around. Doesn't mean it's not going around. It doesn't mean we can't have a crazy outbreak or anything like that, or or whatever else might happen. But we're in a less riskier, not riskier, but a less riskier time of the year, which is good. If we're in winter, we'd be having a very different conversation about about the days and months ahead. So anyway, I guess we're not here to propose a solution, but the three of us have concerns that I think would be on the minds of many, many Catholics throughout Melbourne. Maybe I don't know about throughout the world. I can only speak about this archdiocese here. And if we're talking about it, if we're talking about, vaccinated, unvaccinated people, etc., then I think there'd be a lot of people who are thinking about what going to church will look like. And sadly, there would be people thinking, well, am I going to go back to church right away? And that's an unfortunate consideration that some people have to make because of the people that they live with that might be vulnerable, because they might they might still be afraid. And fear is a natural response, especially when it comes to our mortality. I've seen things, I've seen tweets, Twitter is just such a terrible place. Sometimes people talk about, cowardice, be brave, don't talk to people like that. That's not nice.
Yeah,
don't.
It's not a matter of cowardice.
It's not cowardice.
Looking after your health, looking after other people.
Exactly.
I mean, like your son, Lindsay, he gets very sick when he gets a cold or something, and it wouldn't be good for him to get the virus. My children also, it's bad enough you see them with a normal, like, a virus, a viral infection. They've got high temperatures, fevers. It's not nice. You don't want your children to be sick. Imagine, I mean, they say that kids don't get so sick with COVID, but they could still get sick, and you don't want them to get it, Yeah. So, and also my son Harry gets wheezy and chesty and has had asthma attacks before too. So I'm very
that's Alexander. He's
it.
basically asthmatic now. So yeah.
So,
and all it takes is a cold at the drop of a hat, and he's
right.
and he's,
So we're just doing this. I guess we have this stance because we're just looking out for everybody, really.
Yeah. So before any emails get sent or anything, Catholics who are listening, we love you, and we're not trying to create any division, but we are expressing what some Catholics are thinking, and we just happen to be Catholics who are thinking that as well. And if you do want to write to us, then we want to hear from you. But the thing is, I'm just asking for charity as well, because we've been charitable, I think, in our discussion, and we would hope that you could be charitable in your response to us. Because then I would smile and not cry instead. But anyway, let's.
Everyone's welcome to their opinion, and
absolutely,
and that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah. At the end of the day, we're one church, all right? We're one body of Christ, and I want to remind everyone of that as well.
Yeah, we don't want to be divided. We don't want to be divided through a virus. I mean, there's enough to be divided through. So stick together on this one.
And in a world of division ideologically, the best thing the Catholic Church can do as Catholics is to be united as one under Christ, and that's All right, so rolling on with that in mind, we'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about that as well. But we're going to move on to another topic now. So Caroline, I'm going to throw this over to you. What's going on? So in Australia, we've had we've got a virus going around.
Pandemic.
Yeah, we're locked down at the moment. We've had some crazy protests that have happened in the city where that haven't been so nice, and the footage that's gone around the world has made us look like some kind of dictatorship, which is not true, by the way. So had that. Now we've had an earthquake. I'm just waiting for the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I'm just sitting waiting for that to happen now. All right.
Well, I went to Churchill Park the other day and I saw the 4 kangaroos of the apocalypse, so it's close enough.
Kangaroos of the apocalypse. Yeah, were they? Yep. But anyway, let's. We experienced an earthquake recently. Didn't do a lot of damage, thankfully. But Caroline, tell us about this earthquake and about earthquakes in general.
Okay, so let's learn a little bit about earthquakes. So we did have quite an earth-shattering earthquake compared to what we usually have, which is hardly any earthquakes here in Melbourne. So on the 22nd of September, so it wasn't that long ago, at 9:15 a.m., Melbourne actually experienced a 5.8 magnitude earthquake. And then following that, about 18 minutes later, was a magnitude 4. And the epicenter was northeast of Melbourne in Gippsland, around Mansfield, and it's only about 130 k's from where we are now, because I did my Google Maps just to see the distance, and it was at a depth of 12 kilometres, and I think that's why we felt it so strongly. This earthquake was actually far-reaching, and it was felt in Sydney, it was felt in Canberra, in Adelaide, and even in Tasmania. So,
wow, I forgot about that. Tassie.
Yes, they felt it down there as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was quite unusual. I remember that I was just going upstairs to clean some kitty litter, and all of a sudden I heard this rattling. I'm like, what's going on? And I feel this shaking. I'm like, okay, I know what this is because I felt them in New Zealand before. And then I just grabbed one child, grabbed the other child, brought them close to me. I just thought, hang on, this is going on for a while. It actually went for a while. I don't know how long exactly, but it wasn't just a quick shake. It went on for several, I would say, tens of seconds.
Yeah, actually, Lino, in 5 seconds, tell us, what were you doing during the quake?
Yes, I was going to ask.
Yeah, I was work. I was at work just at work at my receiving station, and a guy was on the forklift. The other guy was next to me, and we looked at the warehouse and was shaking. Now we think when we started shaking, I thought it was just the wind. Yeah, we have a strong wind, man. It goes really throughout through the warehouse. Well, that sounds sorry for the listeners for that. Anyway, and then all of a sudden, the whole ground just shook. The racks, if everyone in the warehouse knows, the racks was just shaking like this, going back and forth. I go, this is not a this is not a huge wind.
Goodness, in a warehouse, you wouldn't want any shaking, would you?
Oh no, because when the rack started shaking, we went, okay, we got to go. And there's this guy coming out, going, come on, out, and we were outside, so we just rushed outside, and it lasted for us almost a minute because we could still feel the aftershocks. Is that correct, Caroline? You still feel the aftershocks later. It was still going a little.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it was, and you can hear other people coming out from there, other warehousing and everything. It was really, really weird. Like I said at first, we're just standing there.
Yeah.
It's the wind. All of a sudden, no, this is not a wind.
Run.
Right, exactly. Out. Get out of the way. Yep, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lindsay, what were you doing?
Yeah. For the Santa, it was very simple. So myself, my wife, my sons, we were all lying down in my bed. We were just having a chat, and then suddenly, and I think someone said, "Oh, that's a really loud truck." And it's like, "That's not a truck. This is an earthquake." And it was like, and it's like, "Oh, this is going for a bit longer than normal."
Yeah, exactly.
It was a pretty strong shake. We felt it. Even from lying on a comfy mattress in bed, we could feel the movement. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So it was a bit of a jolt. We all felt it. Everyone in Melbourne felt it for sure, because I was one of those people who went on Facebook and said, has anyone else felt it?
So
and then I
people.
saw this whole, just my whole feed was everybody.
Did anyone feel that? Did
anyone feel that?
Oh,
we had an earthquake. Yeah, and then everybody was just going off. Yeah, it was crazy. There was actually, I think was it Chapel Street in Prahran, where there was a building where a wall had fallen down. It was an old building. And then there were people saying, stuff fell off their shelves, picture frames may have moved and stuff like that. So people had various experiences. Luckily, no one was injured.
Can I say, there were a lot of people filming, I don't know, coincidentally, because the Channel 7 News had maybe like 10 different people who'd filmed on their camera.
Yes.
The one that broke my heart the most, though, there were these two children, and they got, Duplo blocks. They built this really tall line of Duplo blocks, and then it collapsed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But you know what? The best thing, rather than you pushing over your Duplo blocks, is that if the earth shakes it for you, that's way more exciting.
Do it again, Earth. Do it again.
Yeah, usually my kids build it up and they knock it over, but it's like, no, the earth, wow.
Yeah.
Yes. It was an interesting day because I think there were protests set for that morning in Melbourne, and everybody was kidding that saying, "Oh, Dan Andrews, our premier, organised an earthquake to stop the protest."
Stay in your homes. I'm going to shake the earth.
The protests didn't stop. They happened later in the day. So luckily, those protesters were not in the city near any buildings, because it may have been a different story. But anyway. So that happened. And so I thought, let's talk a bit about earth science and why earthquakes happen. Okay, so we have to talk a little bit about the earth structure first. Okay, so I'm going in a little deep. Oh, no pun intended.
Sorry, I took that as a pun, yeah.
So it's all to do with the structure of the earth. So the earth is made up of 4 layers. Okay, so it's made up of the inner core, the outer core, the mantle, and the crust. So starting with the inner core. The inner core is actually a solid metal sphere right in the middle of the Earth. It's got a radius of about 1,220 kilometers, which by coincidence is about 3/4 the size of the moon. So it's quite large. And it's made up of iron, nickel, and is very dense. The outer core is also made out of nickel and iron, but it's in a liquid form. It sits between 5,180 and 2,880 kilometers below the surface. It's heated, so it's pretty hot. It's heated by radioactive decay of elements of uranium and thorium, and it actually really is churning all the time. It's got really quite turbulent currents. And this actually creates the Earth's magnetic field. Now, if you know a bit about that, as a side note, the Earth's magnetic field protects us from the solar flares and all the radiation coming from the sun. So that's just a little side note for you.
Wait. Still have to wear our sunscreen, people. Don't.
Yes.
Some
things do
Not
get
that protective.
through.
Yeah.
Yes, some
exactly.
things get through. So then the next layer is the mantle. Which probably most of us know about from volcanoes and things like that. It's the Earth's thickest layer, starting about 30 kilometers below the Earth's surface. It's made from iron, magnesium, and silicon. It is hot, and it's a semi-solid kind of material. It also circulates around, but it's a lot less. It's a lot slower than the outer core. At about 100 to 200 kilometers depth is where the mantle's temperature actually reaches the melting point of rock. It forms a layer called the Asthenosphere, and it's where geologists believe that the tectonic plates ride and slide across the Earth. The crust is next, and it's the thin uppermost layer, so that we're sitting on the Earth's crust ourselves. And it's cooler and it's more brittle compared to the layers below. It's mostly made up of, so the largest composition of elements are oxygen, silicon, aluminium, and obviously you do have other elements, but those are the majority. So the crust varies in thickness. Under oceans, it may only be about 5 kilometers thick, but under continents, it can be between 30 and 70 kilometers thick. And then the crust is divided up into these tectonic plates that we mentioned. Did you know that the tectonic plates actually move by about 3 to 5 centimeters a year? So if you're hoping to travel to Europe from Australia one day, just wait a few million years and you might just get there.
Okay.
Perfect.
Wow.
I got time.
You got time.
I'm not going anywhere.
It's thought that the tectonic plates movement is caused by the convection currents of the mantle below. So what about earthquakes? So earthquakes, tectonic plates on the crust have boundaries around them, and these are faults. And the majority of the faults are where the majority of earthquakes are where the faults occur. Okay, so what happens? How does an earthquake happen? So earthquakes happen when tectonic plates slip past each other, because often the plates will be sitting next to each other. They may kind of be wedged up against each other. They may even be in the process of kind of slipping, but they get stuck. And what happens is that when the plates actually eventually slip past each other, any energy that has been stored by, the plates holding onto each other gets released. Yes. And this radiates outwards from the fault in the form of seismic waves. And if you can imagine ripples in a pond, that's how it happens. And that's why we feel so much shaking. The waves shake the earth as they move through, and they're actually measured by seismographs. Now, before I go into that, the area where the earthquake starts is called the hypocenter, but the location directly above that is called the epicenter. So everybody's heard about the epicenter.
Epicenter, yeah.
And the largest main quake, the first one that you feel, the really big shock one, is called the main shock, and the aftershocks follow, and the aftershocks are usually smaller. Now, if you get another big main shock, that's going to be the main shock, and the other one was just kind of like a little shock. So there you go. They've reclassified. Yeah,
warm up.
Whoa.
That's it. And aftershocks can be quite big. I've been in New Zealand where so you get something like a 6.1 or something, and then they'll have a 5.5. The 5.5 still feels quite big, you know, so it's still rattling. I've had it where we've been, you know, you had the 6.1, you're like, wow, that was, you know, you could feel that. You go for a walk afterwards, a few hours later, and you see the bushes shaking and stuff. You go, okay, we're still shaking. So like it's still going.
Yeah, now, New Zealand had devastating earthquakes.
They have,
in,
yes.
Not Christchurch? Or?
Yes, Christchurch was the one, the really big one, only not too long ago, a few years ago. Wellington has had really big ones. Actually, where my husband's parents live in Wellington, so they're on up in the hills, and half of their backyard is kind of slipped away from one of the earthquakes.
Wow.
So it's still fine. Like the rest of the area they live on is quite strong, but that bit was a bit loose and kind of just fell down.
Shook away,
yeah.
I don't know if you know the answers, but is there a major fault line under New Zealand or nearby?
Yeah, so they sit on their. I think they're sitting on a like in the middle of a tectonic plate, so that's why they've got so much geological activity. You know, they've got volcanoes, they've got the hot springs, they've got the earthquakes, and so it's very geologically active in New Zealand.
Wow.
Which is what makes it such a beautiful place as well. You know, if you think about all the island places where there's volcanoes, so Hawaii, you know, like that, it's all volcanically active. So even like Sicily, Italy, they've got beautiful countryside. It's all volcanic, you know. So it does create the one in Spain at the moment that's happening. It's actually created a new landmass.
I was about to say
the volcano. Yeah. Anyway,
that's really fascinating.
It's very interesting stuff. So the seismic waves are measured by seismographs, and they create a graph called a seismogram, and this actually measures the magnitude of the earthquakes. So if you see a seismograph, you'll see little waves being measured. So kind of like looks like, say you could have a ball or a pin on top of a platform, and the base will stay still, but either the needle or the ball will move as the earth shakes. And the larger the wave, the stronger magnitude of the earthquake. If you get little ones, they're kind of small earthquakes. So you can see the movement of the earth. And there are actually two kinds of seismic waves. There's P waves and S waves. They can actually help to tell where an earthquake originates. The P waves are fast traveling waves and will shake the ground first, and then the S waves are slower and will follow the P waves. The time between the P wave and the S wave can actually be measured, and then the distance from the location where the earthquake happened can be calculated. However, the direction can't be calculated by one seismograph. You can actually use triangulation though. So if you have a few seismographs in different locations and they measure the same earthquake, you can actually use the radius of each one, and where the radius kind of intersects, you can find the epicenter. So that's how they do that. So Australia, now going back to specifically this Melbourne earthquake, Australia itself doesn't actually sit on a tectonic fault, say like New Zealand, Hawaii, other countries like we know of Japan, you know, there's that whole plate there. In fact, it sits on a plate called the Indo-Australian plate, and it contains mostly Australia and ocean, and we're like not in the middle, but we're not. It doesn't go through Australia. So why are we still feeling these quakes? So the earthquake in Melbourne actually occurred because there was a build-up of energy in the crust, which was released due to a rupture of a weak zone. So there was actually a fault in the crust. So not the plate, but the crust itself.
Oh, right.
So that can still happen and still cause quakes. Yes. So that was quite interesting to learn, because when you think, I think a lot of us, I actually heard a lot of people, and even at work while they were, chatting online the next day, they were like, well, but we're not on a fault line. Why are we getting quakes? Well, that's the reason why. You can still have faults in the crust, not just be sitting on a tectonic fault and have an earthquake. Yeah. So I guess to Melburnians, the earthquakes feel kind of like far apart, and we'd probably say it's quite rare to have an earthquake here. But they are kind of happening on a regular basis. According to records that have been kept, there's been a magnitude 6 or higher around every 6 to 10 years. And so Australia is still quite seismically active. And I do remember a couple of other smaller earthquakes. I feel like this was the bigger one.
We've had tremors before.
We've had
tremors, little
tremors.
shakes. Nothing as big as this. We've had
nothing
tremors
as big as this. And in fact, this was the largest one recorded in Victoria ever. And there have been other quakes around magnitude 5 in 1996 from Mount Borbor, originating in Mount Borbor, and another one 2012 in Maui. So, we still get the quakes here, and this may not be the last one. So now that we know about it, there you go. So they still don't know a lot about why they happen here in Melbourne, because there's not a lot of funding put into the research, but at least they do know that this one was just caused by a little bit of a fault in the crust. So there you go. Hope I wasn't too earth-shattering.
To be honest, every time you say crust, I was thinking of pizza. So,
me too, to be honest.
Or
the crust on top of a cake after you cook
it.
Pavlova.
That was good. That actually answered a lot of the questions I was going to ask you, because what was responsible if we're not on a fault line and things like that. But I didn't know about stored energy in the crust. That's getting released. That's a really interesting source for earthquakes. I actually didn't know that was a thing, so that was really good. Some new knowledge today.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline.
Welcome.
All right, let's move on now, because look at the time. Wow, we've been talking for a bit. So let's keep going, because we want to share some of the things that have been entertaining us as well. So we talk about books and TV shows and movies, mainly computer games, going out, where we've been and things like that. Lino, let's throw it over to you. I think you mentioned before the show that you've been watching Utopia, which you mentioned last episode. How is your Utopia watching going?
Doing well, actually. Doing well. We're up to season 4 now. And you can see the actors changing so much in their appearances, as in... I'm not being rude. They are aging. But they're aging very well, actually, when you think about it. There's been new comedians coming in now. And it's done so well. And there were a couple of ones that I got to be on my mind. Remind me on the news back in the days. I think there was one about green cities. They were doing green cities. And I remember there was something in the pipelines in one of the government leaders we have had for the past 5 years. And they were talking about making renewable energy, helping about recycling and everything, making green cities. Yeah, they were one of the episodes was about that, and Tony, who's the CEO, there's going, I don't want anything to do with that at the moment. We'll talk about the infrastructure of the freight, of logistics, of doing everything, all that, and they're trying to bang on about green cities, and do all that stuff. So that was just the idea of a Swedish guy who's made a skyscraper out of cardboard or something like that. That's just a little topic. Yeah. I don't know, Caroline. It just doesn't make sense. But it's just the way of, trying to help the ecosystem, instead of, doing this and that, trying to do. But it's a great show at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great political satire, though, isn't it? Because I remember watching an episode. I forgot what the issue was, because they always bring up an issue and use it as And they did this thing where they had they wanted to make big decisions and have big changes, and they consulted with interest groups, and the interest groups made all these, saying, well, if you really want to make change, here's what you need to do. and the politicians were thinking in the background, oh, I don't know if I want to make changes like that. So they come up with a compromise in the end where they've actually done nothing. and like but the satire, like it's so good the way that they do that, like the way that they show like what's going on in the background with politicians and stuff. Yeah,
with all the transport and everything. So Caroline, what they do is he's made a plan that he's been working on for the past 6 months, and he's done so well. He goes, I've done all the maths, blah blah blah, and the people come in and go, what's the plan? Oh, it's this, and they think it's boring. It's boring. I've been working on this plan for the past 6 months, and you say this is not good.
Boring.
We need something fresh. We need something new. And he's going, poor guy doesn't got any much hair in his head, but he is just pulling out his hair. You know, he's going, what? I'm trying to do something, and you want something new. And when they do something new, they want it now. There's no planning with making something new. It's just an idea in your head, and with that idea in their head, they trying to make it. What the man trying to say is they make it. It's not even there. I mean, it is there, but he's saying, I don't want anything to do with that, and they're trying to push the issue on him to make that project happen, and the poor guy is just getting frustrated. Oh, there was one last episode we just watched was they wanted to it's a normal thing in workplaces where they want to put a word on the wall expressing what your work is, innovative, all that stuff, it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I do. We had one once. They decided they'd put a 1% on the wall. It's like, just do that extra 1%. Oh my God.
Exactly. And so the poor receptionist is asking Tom all the time, so what words are you going to put in? And he's saying all these negative words.
Oh, no.
and at the end of the show, she gave the negative sheet to the publishers instead of the positive sheet.
Oh, no.
And so you see these bad words on this wall, and it's almost 10 meters
That's
long
funny.
of bad words, unrespectful and crap, and it's just plastered on the wall. Yeah, it's a great show, guys. I just feel so. Feel sorry for Tom. He tries to do his best, and I want to try this, but then people say he's boring and he wants something new. And it's sadly, it's not what we think about it in Australia. I would not like that.
The show has a very Australian flavour though to it, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. Anything else, Lino?
Still gaming wise, I'm still playing Star Citizen. Yeah, living with the bugs.
Yep. Haven't had any doors drop on you or anything in Star Citizen lately?
No, not yet. No. Been attacked a few times for some reason for doing a courier job. I have no idea why. And
they need to finish making that game, don't they?
They do. It's like almost like a space a space mission, because we're doing very well in space mission. This one just takes forever to do, but it's a great game. Besides that, playing a game called Red Dead Redemption 2. That's a sort of a cowboy gamey, but I won't delve more into that. That's more for the adult side of it. It's a more open world doing things, but in a cowboy way. But really enjoying Utopia at the moment. And after this, Rosehaven. Sorry, Caroline. Yeah, Rosehaven. Well,
I still haven't started watching the latest season. I really have to do it.
Yeah, I think we're up to season 5. I think they're finishing season 6. Is it? I think there was one more episode of season 5, and it's not on iView yet. But
okay,
that was a week ago, so I have to check for that. So hopefully I can catch up onto that. But besides that, AFL Grand Final. That's just
of course,
by.
We just watched that.
So, yes, we watched too.
That was a good night.
For the last bit, I fell asleep.
So when did the earthquake happen? Did that happen a couple of days before the Grand Final? But that was because. After the grand final,
everything becomes a blur in lockdown. I can't remember.
I think it was after.
Was it last weekend, the grand final?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my goodness me! So
I don't know. I can't remember what happened this week.
So we had a grand final, and I think all of us are happy that Melbourne Demons won.
Yes.
After 50.
That was great. Great match. Yeah.
56 years.
50 something years. Yeah.
50 years. Yep. So I'm happy for them. But we say deserve the win. They've played very well.
They did.
Yeah, and
good team, I have to say, really well
played. They are a
played.
very good team. I've talked to other people, and all the years I've lived in Australia and watched Melbourne, I can feel their pain.
Yeah,
Every time there's a game, they can really get there. They lose the game.
Yeah, yep.
And they got great players on those teams. The players themselves are great people as well, you know. And also for an Essendon supporter, we have a special bond with Melbourne in the sense they had a coach called Neil Danaher. And of course Neil Danaher used to play with Essendon with his other three brothers.
Yeah.
So all four brothers used to play with Essendon back in the 80s. 70s as well? I can't remember. Yeah, but Neil Danaher is a special part in our hearts is because of his sorry guys, I
MND?
really apologize. MND.
Yeah.
And his contribution in trying to find the cure for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a great guy, and the family is it is. I mean, sorry, the family is a great family as well.
Yeah.
And I'm happy they won the grand final. Look, I was on the fence with this in a sense. I didn't mind either side to win.
Yeah.
But I was more leaning towards Melbourne. You know, even though Western Bulldogs are a great team as well, and they won back in 2016, and the last one for them was almost 40 something years.
Yeah.
So it seems like the teams that have not done well in the in the year 2000 and beyond are doing well. So all the lower teams are getting up there. So it's not always. I apologize for these other teams, all the Hawthorns, all the Geelongs, and all those guys, those teams you see all the time on the top of the ladder.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing the lower tier.
Yeah.
Apologies. The lower side teams that have done well are doing better.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag now. It's not always this team over and over and over again.
Good to see though, isn't it?
Yeah, so true.
That's right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for that, Lino. Caroline, over to you. You've been reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory on your Kindle.
I have been.
Charlie, chocolate. Yum, yum, yum.
So we finished World's Worst Teachers by David Williams.
Yeah, that was a book about me, wasn't it?
Yes, it was hilarious. Actually, we read another short one called Slime that he read, and the kids absolutely adored it. It was revenge being taken by a slime ball with a kid who made the slime ball. But anyway,
hold a minute. That sounds like a horror film, Caroline.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting.
The Blob.
Yeah.
The Blob. Yes, the Blob.
Oh, yeah, there is that.
There was a okay.
Yeah,
right.
but this was much more fun.
I know about
anyway.
it. Yeah.
And then yes, I thought, you know what? Let's go back to basics and read some. Like David Williams is a really excellent author. I think he's done really well with children's books, and we'll continue reading them. But I thought we need to go to Roald Dahl because he's the originator of these kinds of stories.
This genre, yeah.
Yep. And I thought, well, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, when you've seen the movies, like there's two versions of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There's the one with Gene Wilder and the one with Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka. So I thought, let's read the actual story, the original story of it. And you know how it is when you read the book, you get so much more out of it because there's so obviously the movie can't put every single thing in there.
Yeah.
But the kids have been really enjoying it. So we read at bedtime. We read for about an hour before bed, and put the rosary after that. But we read the story, and then the kids have been loving it because they've been like, oh, I remember that part in the movie and that kind of thing.
Making those associations,
Yeah, so in a way it's kind of like a literature class without them really knowing it's a literature class, which I'm very
I remember those days.
because we talk about what happens in the story and it's really fun. So we've been enjoying that.
Awesome.
Yeah, apart from that, I mean, this week has been, the last couple of weeks has just been hectic, so my own personal entertainment, I haven't been doing much. Like I'd fit in a game of Pikmin every now and then if I could. I've been playing with my stick insects. Because I've got, I've got my leaf one that I spoke about first, and then I've got another leaf insect which looks like a leaf, And I recently got a Goliath stick insect, which is in the process of growing. Yeah, it's going to grow like maybe 3/4 the size of not my full arm, up to my elbow sort of
Wow.
size.
Whoa,
They're quite big, yeah. And now I've got 2 others in the mail that I'm waiting for, shouldered stick insects,
so bad,
which are also really, really big. So those have been entertaining me as well. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. And don't worry, I'm still playing with the
yeah.
chickens. So I haven't forgotten about them.
I was going to say, yeah, chickens. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, just don't put the chickens and the bugs together because there might be a few less bugs.
And you know what? I have an issue between the cats and the bugs because the cats love watching the bugs and sometimes they get a bit excited and I've only got mesh enclosures, so now I need to get stronger enclosures so that
You have to work out your little ecosystem.
Yeah, that's right. There's not been any casualties or anything. Don't worry about that. It's just they kind of like to have a bit of a pat on the enclosure and I have to spray their face so they go away. Spray them with water.
Fair enough. And you've also been digging up Britain's past as well.
Yes, I've been watching this series of documentaries called Digging Up Britain's Past, which is, I love anything history about anywhere, but at the moment it's about England, and I think I know too much about England's but Britain, UK, as it's really interesting. I mean, who doesn't love stories about King Henry and, Queen Elizabeth and all of them before and after that. But this is digging up. So they've got they're divided into episodes. So there's one about witches and when they used to, they dug out things about the time. And there actually was a like the Salem witch trials. They had a similar one in Stirling in England. It was King James I who had something against witches, and he was persecuting them. He'd even go to the trials himself and,
oh my goodness me,
condemn these women who were like, they'd maybe use some herbs in water to kind of, or they'd make little herbal remedies and sell them, and then people would accuse them of being witches. It's really sad, actually.
Yeah, right.
And they would hang them. It was horrible. So they dig up stuff, they dig up things from at that time and they'd kind of find evidence about that. There was one about peasants. So they found about, how peasants lived, what they ate. They found some skeletons and they examined the skeletons and they could see, their diet, from their teeth, their bones, if they had ailments, stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. And there's a whole lot of them. There's also one about warships, about war horses, which is really interesting. The horses, they had stables of the horses that they raised to use in the world wars. And it was a bit emotional, that one, because the poor horses, being used in war and the men who, and that kind of thing. So I find that I highly recommend it. I just found them on YouTube. It's actually Mum recommended them to me because she's a history buff as well.
History buff, yeah.
So it's digging up Britain's past.
Okay, so if you Google that, if you type that in YouTube, do a search,
and it'll all come up. Yeah, and then there's, how they suggest a whole lot of other documentaries around it. There's really good documentaries there too. So
of course, fantastic.
Go for it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, so this week I watched just a couple of days ago. So again, at time of recording, this will be 2 weeks ago, but a couple of days ago, I watched the final episode of the Inspiration 4 documentary.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was they produced 4 episodes before the civilian crew went to space, and they produced a final episode afterwards, discussing. Like the episode were, it showed the launch, it showed footage we hadn't seen of them in space and what they'd been doing, and obviously their return to Earth a little bit afterwards as well. And it was great. I just loved, one scene that got me. There are a couple of scenes that got me. All right, one scene that got me that was really cool was when they opened the hatch where they could get to the cupola, which is this is the largest window, apparently the largest window ever in space. It's this big domed window on top of the top of the Dragon capsule. And they could see like the Earth as a sphere from it, and they moved the camera around the Earth so you could kind of get the view. But it was nothing less than stunning seeing the Earth from the view that they had. And I can only imagine what it would be like to be there to see what they saw.
Oh my gosh, be amazing.
Yeah, one minor thing I thought was really cool was that they still had coffee up there. Like it was in a little, the pouches, but they were able to warm up coffee in pouches and suck coffee through a pouch. What do you want?
Coffee and a view of the Earth?
I mean, yeah, I'd love to have my coffee pouch and just sit in the cupola and watch the Earth. That'd be amazing. Yeah.
Goodness me! Wow.
The other thing that was
coffee.
really cool and got me a bit teary, don't tell my wife, but Haley
can't tell your wife,
Arsenault...
Lindsay. Doesn't she listen to this podcast?
No, thankfully, so that's good. She hears enough of me, so she doesn't need to hear a recording of me as well. Yeah, yeah, but Haley Arsenault is the young nurse who works at St. Jude's Hospital for Kids with Cancer, and she did like a live conversation from space with these kids.
Awesome.
And it was just beautiful, just the way that she's trying to inspire them to say, look, I was like you and I've been to space. Imagine what you'll be able to do with your life as well. And it was beautiful. Just to see that this wasn't about, hey, I'm in space, look at me, I won a competition. This was really about giving back, and I thought that was beautiful. So,
awesome.
it's worth watching the whole thing. It was great. And just coincidentally, I don't know if the ABC decided to do this on purpose or if the release was intentional. However, the Foreign Correspondent program did an episode that night that it was released on ABC TV. About Elon Musk and about Starship and about going to space. And it was a great episode too. I was actually really impressed because...
I have to put it on my list.
Yeah, it's worth watching. It's totally worth watching because normally, sometimes it's all about controversy. This wasn't about controversy. This was just about the fandom that's behind it. And I was shocked because they got in touch with, with Everyday Astronaut, and they had Tim Dodd and they interviewed him and they used some of his footage, which was really cool. So he was there speaking about it. She went and visited these people and spoke to them. Cosmic Perspective, who are like, I'm just going to call them space hippies. Like they're like totally into it, but they're really like, anyway, you'd have to watch it to see what I'm talking about. But she spoke with them and she spoke with other different people. I'm pretty sure it was Lab Padre because I know that he horses and boats and stuff like that. He does all those kinds of stuff as well around Boca Chica. He's like a massive fan. And then she also had an inspiration for Connection. So she went to Boca Chica and did some filming there with Starship and what's happening there, whatever. But then she also went to the launch of the inspiration for Mission. So she actually went there and saw it and did a few things, talking about that as well. And you could see that she was inspired, that Sarah Ferguson, who was the host of this episode, she was inspired by what she saw. So I was actually really impressed with this episode. Wow. I thought it was really cool. So I'd recommend that. I don't know if you're in Australia, you can just go to the ABC iView app. I'm not sure if you can watch it overseas. I'm not sure if that's possible or not.
ABC, isn't it? Foreign Correspondent.
Foreign Correspondent's on the ABC.
Dateline. No, Foreign
That's SBS.
Sorry.
Dateline.
My bad. Yep.
Yeah, that's all good. Now, two other really quick ones. I've been watching the Foundation series on Apple TV Plus, and it's a sci-fi series, and I'm actually liking it. I think some people might find it a little bit slow because it's not all like guns and explosions and action and things like that, and sci-fi battles. It's really it's drama. It's political maneuvering. It's it's relationships. It's those kind of things. I'm actually finding it really interesting. I have read the first book. I need to read more of them. And it's really interesting.
Big books, aren't they, Lance?
They're not that big. No, they're not really.
Am I thinking about
June? Maybe I don't know if June was a big one.
Okay.
Yeah.
June. Yeah, true. June.
Possibly, yeah. But anyway, it's considering that you can't make a literal translation of the book because of the way the book is written, into a series.
Of course.
I like what they've done. They've made some interesting choices, which is good. There's some characters who are male or female, which is all good. Because it adds to the drama in different ways. The backgrounds of these characters are different. Sometimes the roles are a bit different as well, which is, so it's taking the best of the Foundation series and trying to turn it into a series. And I think what they've done is really interesting. So I'm interested to see where it goes. I would say don't show it to your kids until you've watched it yourself first. Like, there's nothing really full on, but it does hint at certain things that happen. And there's a little bit of violence here and there that could be disturbing. It's not like, put it this way, it's not Game of Thronesy kind of stuff, thankfully. All right. So it's totally watchable. But I would say that if you're considering watching it with your children, watch it first and decide if it's appropriate for them is what I would say. Because there are children of different ages who could handle different things depending on stuff. Anyway, so and lastly, so I got excited about some news that was announced on Twitter. J. Michael Straczynski, I hope I said that correctly. He was the showrunner, Caroline, of Babylon 5 back in the day. I know you're not a fan.
Did you hear that, people?
He announced that he is going to do a reboot of Babylon 5.
I'm not sure why I'd want to do that, but anyway.
Here we go.
Sorry.
So I'm excited because it's him, and I'm hoping that because it's him who's in charge. Now, that it will be a good reboot. I don't know when it's happening, but I'm going to be excited for now until he either ruins it or makes it really awesome. Now, so I'm rewatching the original Babylon 5 series. Now, I know, Caroline, you're like, whatever. So I'll tell you what. So first of all, Babylon 5, like the first season is good, but not great. Okay. You can tell they're really, it's kind of experimental. They're setting things up, and it's got some of that, you know how sometimes there's a lot of exposition in the dialogues, like, hey, we can make food doing this, or, it's like, we got technology, whatever. It's like, all right, whatever. You can gloss over that. And the acting isn't always awesome as well. Sometimes, it's a bit overacted. That just happens to be the case. But Babylon 5 set up some classic characters as the series developed. And what the strength of Babylon 5 for me was this. First of all, JMS, who's the director, he wrote the majority of the scripts. He's a comic book writer, and he's written for Marvel and for others as well. And you can see that he's put those elements into the show, especially on my rewatching. I'm noticing a lot of that happening as well. Because I know how the series ends, and I think I was about 13 years old, 12 or 13 years old when I watched the first season, which was why I probably wasn't totally impressed. And I actually missed a lot of episodes in my first watching of it as well. But I can see the mythology, because there's this massive mythological story that he tells. And I can actually see the mythology being set up in season 1 that I didn't realize it was happening. He had like I think it was a 4-year plan, I think it was, and then they convinced him to make a 5th season or something. But he actually had a plan for this whole story. I'm actually enjoying watching the mythology. Now, the special effects are nothing to look at, really. Like, they look like a computer game from like an old DOS game sometimes. And some of the costume and makeup, to me, it looks like some of the early days of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
All right. Okay. However, having said that, the series gets really good. I know it gets really good. I'm looking forward to getting to that point and just rewatching and getting some of the backstory that led to that. So I'm rewatching Babylon 5, and I'm looking forward to rediscovering some of the episodes that I missed in my first watching too. So that's what I'm doing.
Cool.
Yeah. So before we finish up the show, I actually wanted to mention very briefly that we've had a bit of listener feedback, which is awesome. So I'm just going to share these very briefly. So first of all, from our Facebook page, from last episode, John via Facebook, thanks for your feedback. He said, I really enjoyed the discussion about the parish renewal initiative. I can certainly understand why many in our Catholic community would be reluctant to see change, but the question remains, if not this, what other option is there, as there are not enough priests to replace those retiring? So, thank you for that feedback. And one thing I'd be thinking is, if we set up missions and set them up well, I would hope that one of the natural consequences is that we would see more vocations, because the missions are not about tightening the belt because we're having shortages. They're about renewing our mission as baptized Catholics. So I would hope that one of the results is that we probably would see more people discerning a vocation as a result. So we'll see. Sarah, our friend Sarah, we love Sarah. Sarah, if you're listening, we love you so much.
Hi, Sarah.
You're such a good friend of the show.
Yo, Sarah, yo.
Yeah. But Lino, Sarah was responding and sharing something based on what you were talking about, and I think Caroline, you might have mentioned it too, but about people with disabilities accessing church as well. So she shared a document which we will read and talk about in a later episode. I think this is a topic worth talking about. The document, if anyone wants to look ahead though, is called That All May Worship. So if you Google That All May Worship, you'll see an ecumenical document. And this is what she said. I listened to your latest episode and wanted to share with you a document that you might find helpful. By the way, I think we did. It may not completely apply because it's very American-centered, but I think everyone can find benefit from reading this. Personally, my favorite is the outline for a fully accessible sanctuary, which I know is a complete dream, but one can hope. So thank you so much for that. It's all about, the document's all about how we can make our church communities more accessible to people with disabilities, and not just physically accessible, but also in terms of our understanding of the people that are coming to church. So we'll say more about this in a a couple of episodes down the track, we are going to read it and talk about it, because just from my brief skim reading, I think it's really good. And I'll look for the Australian equivalent as well and see if there's anything else we can add to that as a topic. And lastly, check out this email that we got. Hello, I'm a 12-year-old Catholic from America. I absolutely love your show and all the things that you do. Thank you. Keep up the good work, and God bless. And this is from Dominic. So Dominic, thank you so much for that feedback. I can't tell you how much that made our day. So God bless you wherever you are in America. And thanks for listening. And I hope you keep listening as well and telling us what you think of our shows. Now, lastly, I just wanted to mention very quickly, the last episode of Raising the Bets, if you haven't heard it, it's about 4.5 minutes long. It's from our CEO, Dom, who's been such a great supporter of our show and who supported us so much. So we wanted to throw some support back at Dom and his family, because they're going through a rough time at the moment. Now, this is, again, 2 weeks ago, but however, they will still be in this circumstance by the time this episode comes out. Unfortunately, and Dom has mentioned this in his podcast and online, so I'm not revealing anything that nobody else knows about. Unfortunately, their house experienced some flooding from a plumbing issue, and it revealed a whole lot of other issues to do, and problems in the house, including mold and some other things as well. And sadly, the cost of replumbing the house apparently was going to be quite high. Their insurance will cover some of the repairs after the plumbing work is done, but not the plumbing itself. And so they're dealing with costs of having to find accommodation and sort out food in different places and all the other things that come with having a problem like this. It has been a stressful time for the family, but I've got to say, from the posts that I've been reading, the updates that we've been getting, they're taking it in their stride. But you can listen to the latest episode, I should say, of Raising the Bets. They won't be recording for a while Dom and Melanie and their family deal with the situation. However, he does mention that there is a GoFundMe that has been set up. And it's great to have seen the generosity that people have contributed to that as well. We've all thrown in a few dollars ourselves each as well, just to support their family.
It all helps.
Yeah, but if anyone would like to support or at least just find out what's happening with Dom and to keep them in their prayers, the last episode of Raising the Bets, it's very short. Just have a listen, and Dom will talk about the support in that episode that they're needing at the moment. But Dom, I know you're listening. We're praying for you and your family, for you and Melanie and the kids, and we really, really hope in our prayers that everything will be restored for you soon.
I can sympathise too, because it happened to us a few years ago.
You've had a similar situation, Carol, a few years back.
It's actually our sewerage backed up and went back into the drain and all through the house. Oh my gosh. So
which was not awesome.
Fully sympathise with you, Dom, and hope you get through it soon.
Yeah, so we are definitely thinking of you all the way from the other side of the world, and hoping the other hemisphere, and hoping it all turns out well soon. So prayers for you and Melanie and for the Betts children as well. So with all of that, let's finish up. We want to thank you all for joining us for episode 66 of the Catholics of Oz. And as always, before we go, we'd love to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for this show and all the other shows to exist. And today we want to thank Joseph R., Gwyn M., Gary S., Jim, Tori S., and Mary N. Through their generous donations at sqpn.com/give, they make it possible for the Catholics of Oz and all of the other shows at StarQuest to continue. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So we'd love to know what you thought about today's show. All the links to the things that we've talked about will be in our show notes, so please feel free to get in touch with us. And you can find those show notes at sqpn.com/Oz, spelled OZ. And while you're on the SQPN website, why don't you sign up to the Insiders Club newsletter at sqpn.com/about/newsletter. Or if you're a North American listener, and here's that number we were talking about before at the start of the show, Lino, you can join the StarQuest fan club mailing list by texting StarQuest to 66866. Send StarQuest to 66866. You can also visit us at the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. And don't forget, we have our own Catholics of Oz Facebook page that anyone is welcome to join at facebook.com/Catholics of Oz. And you can join us in discussing our latest episodes there. And also don't forget, which a few people have done and we love, you can reach us by email at catholicsofOz@sqpn.com. Caroline, thank you so much for shaking our episode up with some earthquakey topics and everything else. So thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you guys, you rocked.
Thanks. And Lino, thanks for sharing your daddy short legs with us today. So great to have you on the show, Lino.
It's been great, guys. All you have to say is look after the earth, guys, because Godzilla is asleep. And
Yes.
That's probably why we had the earthquake. He was snoring and going, guys, please just look after the earth because I'm trying to sleep here, okay?
I think the
No.
protesters must have woken him up. So
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I didn't mention that reason for earthquakes.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be part of the next science topic.
Yes, Godzilla.
Godzilla and the earthquakes. And once again, I'm Lindsay Sand, and thank you for listening to episode 66 of the Catholics of Oz on StarQuest.